History Classroom. And I am your professor, Hicks. And welcome again and welcome back to all my fans and followers. I want to remind you, please subscribe. Please subscribe. I need to drive up my subscriptions, and I know you're watching. Just takes a moment to hit that little subscribe button, and you're on your way. Even if you don't get a chance to watch the channel at that time, just hitting the subscribe button pushes up and drives my channel. So please don't forget to do that. And also like and share. All of that we need to continue at the Hicks Classroom Connection. All right. So I'm back and a little rusty. I was on do a little test drive earlier, and just to try to get myself acclimated again, because I've been away for a few days. And just like anything else, just jump on the bike and start riding again. But I must say that I had to steady myself on the bike a bit. So anyway, I'm only going to spend about 10 to 15 minutes with you today as an introductory for today's lesson. I will be going on to my site later on today and having a slideshow presentation. Yes, a slideshow presentation. And I'm so proud of it because I pretty much did it myself, and not without much help from my moderator, who comes and goes because of it's work. It's time to work, and it's very difficult for people to get here, particularly when you're retired. Yes, I am off the plantation, no longer serving, and my time, of course, is unlimited, man. I don't want to say unlimited. We got to be careful with that, but my time is free, and other people have to work, and I understand that. So it's also given me the opportunity to take a challenge and do this on my own. I'm learning. And that's one of the things about being denied something, because necessity is the mother of invention. And if you really want to get something done, you can't wait for someone to do it for you. You really have to get in there and do it. So I'm proud of myself that I've been able to work out of this little malaise it is as it relates to technology, as us older folks are. We're all having. I'm not the only one. So I wanted to start by letting everyone know, of course, and I kind of mentioned it, but say it again, that I'm just going to kind of give you an introduction where we're going today. But most importantly, please go on my channel today, where I will have my slideshow presentation and concluding with the Moors. Though I'm only concluding temporarily. We are going back because one of the things you have to really talk about, if you really want to satisfy your Moorish instincts, is the Inquisition. Yes, the Inquisition. All right, which was started by in Spain. All right, and I don't want to give too much away, but that's important. That comes later, though. That comes later. We're going to hit a couple other topics before we go there. So I wanted to start off by talking about my early experience with Christianity. As a young man, I was very much into Christianity. I was a young, what can I say, from the 5, 6, 7, mom took me and my brother and I to church every day. We probably went to church every day. I can't think of a time we didn't. I can almost remember Tuesdays was the day that we went for the church choir, and I love to sing. I have a pretty decent voice, and I love to sing. And I remember the pianist, Mrs. Edgerton, with her long nails clicking on the piano, and we're singing along, and I always wanted to be a lead singer, so she allowed me to be. My voice got better, and I became pretty prominent as a church singer. As I reached into my lessons, I became a junior deacon, and that was fun too. I walked people to the pew and or to the church seats, and took part in many other types of activities, particularly on communion. You held the what was that, little trays that had little wine things in them. And I wasn't one of those kids who wanted to try the wine. I must say that I was there. And then as I grew into an adult, my views began to change. My mind and conscience began to expand, and I began to challenge some of the Christian beliefs that I had been, believing in for so long. Um, my mom, who was a devout Christian, devout, went to her grave with Jesus in her mind and in her lips. Um, when she left this earth and transitioned, that's all she thought and talked about, and not in a fearful way. No, 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 no. My mom was so brave when she left here. It was a sight to see. It really was. Some of the things she said and did moments and hours before she left us. But before that, her and I, as my conscience expanded, began to have very, 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 very serious arguments, discussions, and debates. And my mother, fortunately, or should I say, well, not fortunately or unfortunately, but my mother must be noted that she read the Bible through and through probably over 5 or 10 times. She was a brilliant woman. She was a brilliant theologian. She she knew the Bible backwards and forward, and she argued it pretty well, and sometimes not just from a traditional Christian background, but sometimes from a secular background. Because my mom never made my brother and I adhere strictly to Christian principles. I was allowed to go out and party. I was allowed to go out with friends. I had a girlfriend, so I wasn't like some friends that I know, strictly restricted from engaging in any secular activity. By secular, I mean things that are non-religious. But as I began to grow, my conscience began to expand. I began to have challenges and challenge Christianity. And there I would have these great discussions with my mom that would get very, very heated. Sometimes I would have to leave. By this time I was an adult. And again, I began to pursue history as something that was going to be a passion of mine for the rest of my life. And as I became more of a historian, and I began to understand things from both sides, I also, at some point in my life, I would say roughly maybe about 25 years ago, decided that I did not have to forego all my Christian values, because I found out that the Christian values that I was supporting and long ingrained in me were truly African values. Yes, African values. See, many people are not aware that Christianity began in Africa. And I must preface my comments by saying at that particular time, they didn't call it Christianity. Like many things that are European based, they are the name Christianity, or the term Christianity, is relatively new. But in Africa, and let's say Alexandria, before the Persian, before the Greek invasions, uh, we had a religion, or should I say a spirituality, that came out of something called the Egyptian Mysteries System. And if you go to Egypt like I have, knowing that Egypt is at least 10,000 years old, and looking and reading the monuments, I did not go to Egypt on a tour for fun and games. I went on a tour, educational tour. I received a diploma. I received accolades and things for being there. So this was not your typical Egyptian tour that many people go on to see the monuments, they go home. No. For an example, we would spend a day out in Egypt, 110, 120 weather, and then we would go back into a big hall and for another 2 hours discuss, examine, and analyze what we saw. All right, so this was a lot different than most people are doing. But once I got there and realized that I was looking and reading things that were in a Bible, but were developed, designed, and created well before there was a mention of a Bible, I began to say, well, I didn't have to throw the baby out with the bathwater. So what I did was, sure, I gave up my Christian practices because I don't believe in them, but I kept my spirituality. And thank God, inside my spirituality, as the Egyptians believed, they believed in one God. One God. Though many Europeans have attacked Egyptians and black people, particularly those in Africa, for being or for having worshiping idols, that is so ignorant. It is so dumb that, with the advent of the internet and all the information available, I can't even address that anymore. But Africans, for the most part, and you can check this anywhere, believe in a single being. What you guys refer to God, they might refer to as several different things. Amma, Allah, depending on where you come from. So with that said, I had to come back and was happy to come back to some of my Christian values. Remember, not practices. I don't do church, any of those type of things anymore because they are not in line with African values or African practices. I believe in purity. Purity. So if I wanted Christianity, I would go to a church and I would adopt Christian practices that were pretty much promulgated by European colonizers. This is not what we practice today, is not the Christianity, or let's say take that word Christianity up, this spirituality, this was not what the Africans created. So that brings me to present day. That brings me to what is going to happen today with my presentation. One of the most important things to understand is that when the Europeans and Greeks particularly entered Egypt, invaded Egypt, like most invaders and colonizers, they colonize and corrupt the information. When we're talking about the Moors and their intellectual reality and intellectual achievements, we have to understand that the information that they brought back to Europe from the Greeks and the Arabs, doing translation, was nothing more than the same mystery system information that the Egyptians had, but what had been plagiarized, copied, and stolen by the Greeks. Some of them, not all of them, claimed it for themselves and then reintroduced to us as black people during slavery. That is why you find African people the most religious people in the world, because we were. Our first government was a theocracy. We were able to successfully integrate science with secularism. Science with secularism. As you know, today in American government, you can't mix science or religion with science. You can't even practice religion in a secular place. As I might have mentioned in one of my videos when I was coaching basketball, I was not allowed to say a prayer because I would be falsely, as they interpreted it, leading students who may not have been Christian into prayer. And that would be a violation of their, First Amendment rights. Therefore, as coaches, we were unable to do that. But I allowed my kids to lead themselves in prayer, because regardless of what my beliefs were, I believe in prayer. So with that said, that brings us to the Moors and the Moors' impact on Europe as it relates to science and the Renaissance. Much of what I said has to be put in place because when we talk about Moorish erudition, we're talking about African erudition. And we're talking about religion, or should I say spirituality, because there was no difference in African society between religion and science, or spirituality and science. And we're going to learn today how far the African Moors took that particular idea of science and spirituality, something that is a no-no in Western culture. So, when you see and listen today the Moors' impact on scientific revolution as well as the Renaissance, you will get to understand how the Moors thought knowledge was faith. They thought truth was faith, and science was belief. Very important concept to understand. In our Western society, one has to be separated from the other. That is not so in African societies. Spirituality is unseen science, and science is seen spirituality. That's from Kaba Kamade and his wonderful book. So, this quick presentation or update, or, well, it's not a presentation, the presentation will be coming on my channel. I wanted to preface my or introduce my topic through this means, so that today when you come on and what you're listening to, you can gain a full understanding or have a better understanding based on these me prefacing these comments before the slideshow begins. So I think that's about it. Again, I'm only on for a few minutes. I actually had to time myself because I can go on and on. And again, today's my first day broadcasting in a while, so I have to get my language and brain working and the synapses and touching and firing. So my brain is saying, or my mouth is saying what my brain is thinking. As I say, when you get older, it lags behind a bit, but that's okay. That's not a problem for me. So again, followers and fans, I will see you within a couple of hours. I will be posting a video in my channel. It probably will go for about 35-40 minutes, hopefully not too much longer. And we will again be discussing the conclusion of Moorish erudition as it relates to Europe, Spain in particular, the Iberian Peninsula, and its people. Ashe.